Welcome to the SAFeTY Chronicles, exploring how to keep people and pets safe from the cycle of interpersonal violence. I am your host, Allie Phillips, founder and CEO of Sheltering Animals and Families Together, the SAFeTY Program, a nonprofit organization working with domestic violence shelters to eliminate the pet housing barrier to safety. As the founder, I have led the global movement in helping domestic violence shelters create on-site pet housing while elevating the criminal justice response to how animal abuse links to crimes against people. I am a former prosecuting attorney, internationally recognized legal expert, and public speaker, award-winning author, and advocate for protecting vulnerable victims. In this podcast, we will explore how and why animals are harmed in the cycle of family violence and the human-animal bond that keeps victims in harm's way with their pets. Guest speakers and I will share strategies for shelters and professionals working to safeguard survivors, why pet-inclusive sheltering is life-saving, and safety tips for those who need help. None of the content will be graphic. If you are in harm's way, please contact your nearest domestic violence shelter or call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Let's get started. Welcome back to another podcast episode. And we are in the process of looking at assessing the needs in your community and recognizing that if your community does not have a pet-inclusive domestic violence shelter, then this is what the SAFeTY program is here to help with. So I'm going to go through various topics over the next several podcast episodes to really help explain what the SAFeTY program is about. So if you didn't watch the last one, it's all about assessing the needs so that you can get local data. And that will really help your community understand why you need a pet-inclusive domestic violence shelter. Today, I want to talk about housing options. Okay, what do you do when you realize we need to do this? We have a domestic violence shelter. We need to become pet inclusive. So I want to go through the 4 housing options that the SAFeTY program has created in so many shelters, over 325 shelters in 6 countries and 47 states. Every shelter is set up differently. Some are private homes concealed in a neighborhood. Some are large apartment buildings. They're in metropolitan areas. They're in urban areas. They're in rural areas. Every shelter is different. And there's just under 2,000 shelters here in the United States. I wish I could get international statistics. That is very, very difficult to get. But what we do is we help shelters work with what they have to find the space to house pets on site. You know, initially, when I'm talking to shelters, many believe it just cannot be done. They don't feel that they have the space. But when I either look at photos or videos of their shelter, including the outside areas, or I visit, I've always found space. I've always found a way to do it. I come at the SAFeTY program from a can-do attitude. It can be done. I remember very early on, I mean, my gosh, this was when this concept came to me in the late 1990s in a courtroom of all places. I just couldn't fathom why this couldn't be done. And then when I started teaching about it in 2003, a lot of people thought I was crazy. And now it's grown to over 325 shelters that I'm aware of. I'm sure that there's more shelters out there. And so I really love to help the shelters understand they can do it, and they can do it simply. I've seen shelters complicate it, but it can be done simply. And when a shelter recognizes that 2/3 of their community has pets, it's a stark realization that they need to do more to serve their community. I mean, chances are if you're listening to this podcast, you have a companion animal at home. Could you fathom leaving them behind in a disaster? Whether it's a natural disaster like a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake, or a disaster like domestic violence. Could you fathom leaving them behind? Most people can't. So we need to find a way to make this happen. So I want to actually show some photos. So here I am going to share my screen and help you really see what it looks like of what the shelters are doing. All right, let's talk about housing option one. So housing option one is where you put the pets right in the room with their family. Now, this works best if a domestic violence shelter has individual rooms for each person, each family. It's not like a communal housing situation. So this works great when you can put the pets right in the room. And to me, it's very much like going on vacation and finding a pet-friendly hotel. That's what it's like. So this option can be set up immediately. You can literally make a decision that tonight you're going to take your first pet. You're going to put it out there and say, we are now pet inclusive. And you can do it without any money. It's free. You just put them in the room with their family. Now, it provides the most amount of comfort to the family. And where I find that shelters have a concern with this is when it comes to allergies and other residents or staff having fear of pets. Okay, so when it comes to allergies, I want you to look at what Amsterdam has done. So I had an opportunity, and these are my photos. I visited Amsterdam, and they have expanded greatly. It is phenomenal to hear their progression with the SAFeTY program. When a room has hard flooring, that is so easy to clean up when it comes to allergies. Most pet allergies are when you actually touch a pet with your hands and then you touch your face. But there can be airborne allergies. So having hard flooring is easy to clean up. I mean, I have allergies to cats. I have 3 cats, but I have hard floors, and it makes it super easy to clean. Now, I do know shelters that have carpeting, and they just shampoo in between residents, and it works for them. If a shelter has a radiator system, they can rest assured that heating and air is not going to be going through the air ducts room to room. Now, if you do have forced heating and air in your shelter, all you have to do is go to a hardware store, buy filters that you can literally cut, and you put them in the air ducts and they act like filters. Or you can put out a donation fundraising request that you want to buy air purifiers to put in the rooms that you have designated as pet friendly. This is what I love seeing shelters do, is that they identify certain rooms as pet friendly and other rooms as off limits. Okay. Another thing that they do, and I think all domestic violence shelters do this, is they encase mattresses in zippered casings. And this is primarily for bed bugs, but it's also to prevent the pet dander. That's what people are allergic to. It's not hair, it's pet dander. It prevents the pet dander from getting in the mattresses. So these simple things can be done to make it very open for pets to come into the room with their family. No cost, no setup. It's super easy. Now, let me show you Victorville, California. These were this shelter was one of the first members of the SAFeTY program. I think they started housing pets back in 2008, 2009. And they identified a couple of rooms that were going to be pet friendly. And what they did was they broke through the cement wall, created a little pet door, and then put chain linked fence on the outside so that dogs could go out. They were contained, they were safe, but they could go out and they could get fresh air. And it's working for them. It is such a beautiful setup. I love the creativity of what the shelters are doing because every shelter is different. Every shelter is unique. One size is not going to fit all. In Caldwell, Idaho, you can see, look at, unless you're in your car, don't look. I listen to YouTube in my car. So I will just try to describe this. So it's a picture of a room that has a hardwood floor. That is super easy. That is super easy to clean. And there's a photo of a dog in it, and there's a carrier in that. Some of the shelters, when they have pets in the rooms, they ask the families to crate the pets when they're gone. If they're gone to work or gone to school or going to the grocery store, they ask them to crate their pets. So that's fine. You can do whatever you need to as a shelter to keep everything safe. So the Caldwell Advocates Against Family Violence Shelter told me, and I'm going to read this quote, "We recognized several years ago the need for families and pets to stay together during the healing process and the journey to safety. Over the years, we have had dogs, cats, birds, fish, turtles, guinea pigs, and hamsters." I love that. I love that. They are open to helping pets and putting them in the rooms. It provides the most comfort for the survivor who has lost everything. It's that human animal bond of being with their pet. In Laramie, Wyoming, the Albany County Safe Project has apartment style housing, and the apartments have carpet in them, but what they did was so creative. So the photo that you see on the screen is a back room that they built onto the apartments. And so there's a door going from the apartment to this. I mean, it just kind of looks like a shed, but they built this back room that is a pet room. And it has a secure outdoor area on the outside. So the pets are in the pet room, the family is in the apartment, and then you can go outside the back door of the pet room, and there is a secure outdoor area where dogs can go and they can play and they can run around and do what they need to do. I love that. That is so creative. All right, now we have four. I want to talk about option number 2. This is where you create an indoor kennel. So you are creating a kennel for animals separate from where their family is being housed, but it is still technically inside the shelter. It's an indoor kennel. So several years ago, I had an opportunity to visit Shelter House in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, and I took this photo. And I mean, it just looks like a veterinary setup, right? I mean, you see the cages. They have an outdoor area, which I'm going to talk about next. They have an outdoor area for dogs. But this is for the smaller pets that stay in cages. And then the family just literally walks from their room in the shelter to this indoor kennel, and they can visit with their pets. You know, they can play with them, they can cuddle with them. What I love is the shelters that provide that sort of comfort. So I want to show you here in Xenia, Ohio, the Family Violence Prevention Center. Again, you can see it's inside the shelter. They have separate kennels. You can see the little rooms that they have for each pet. And then they have a common area where they can bring their pet out. You know, there's a chair, there's toys, they can play with them. And this is where they can interact with them. In Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, Interval House, again, has an indoor kennel. And I mean, it's beautiful what they built. They not only have the cages and the kennels for animals, but they have chairs, they have couches, they have a television, they have Wi-Fi. So the family can just go and hang out and be with their pet, just like we would at home. You know, when I'm relaxing in front of a Hallmark movie, I'm surrounded by my cats. It's just what they do. So I love what they've done at Interval House. Now, this setup costs a little more money depending on what you do. It can cost maybe a couple $100 because you're buying crates. It could cost a couple $1,000. But what you're looking for is a space inside the shelter. It could be a spare room. It could be a utility room. You know, not Harbor House. The shelter in Naples, Florida. They took a utility room, put crates in it. That's their shelter. And it works great. So it's finding a space. It could be a basement. It could be an attached garage. and you can create an indoor kennel. Costs a little bit of money. I'm a big fan of putting it out on social media and to your community and going to your community partners and all the community groups like the Rotary Club, the Kiwanis Club. Those clubs are really open to the SAFeTY program. Go and talk to them about what you want to do. Ask them for the couple $100, the couple $1,000. Show them what you want to do, and you'll be surprised how the money will come in. Okay, you can do this fairly quickly depending on the setup. Now, interval house, that obviously took more time. It's very intricate, but the other shelters that have done this have literally set up in a couple of days. And it provides some level of comfort to the family because they don't physically have to leave the shelter to go see their pet. They can just walk down the hall, and it helps to confine any concerns about allergies or even fear of pets because the pets are contained. No other shelter resident is touching the pets. All right, let's go to option 3. This is an outdoor kennel. Now, when I say outdoor kennel, it can be a physical structure. It can look like a little mini house. It can be a shed where you go to your local Home Depot or Lowe's and you buy a shed and you configure it to be an outdoor kennel. Now, these are going to cost more. These could be a couple $1,000s to a couple $1 million, depending on what you want to build. So it's going to take more time. It depends on the intricacy of what you want to build. But what I love is the uniqueness of what all the shelters are doing. And again, put it out to your community. Tell them what you want to do. Put it on social media and let people donate to this. So the First Step Shelter in Detroit, Michigan, built this. It's just basically a little mini house that is right on the property of their shelter. So the families just need to walk out the back door, take a couple of steps, and they go into this pet shelter. And it is really nice. It has a fenced-in outdoor area. This is what the inside looks like, where they have the kennels for the dogs. They have smaller kennels for smaller pets, for cats, rabbits, guinea pigs, small dogs. They have couches, they have television, they have Wi-Fi. You can just go and sit and relax and be with your pet. In Salem, Oregon, the Center for Hope and Safety, again, you see a little mini house that they built right on the property. And, each pet has their own room. So the families go into the room, hang out with their pet. You can take your computer, you can take your phone, you can take a book, you can just hang out with them. But it is technically a backyard, what I call an outdoor kennel. In Kerrville, Texas, the Hill County Crisis Council built this. Actually, they bought a pre-built shed. The fencing on it is chew-proof, okay, so it can't be chewed through. On the back side is totally secure kennel for the dogs. And then there's a little doggy door that goes into the fenced area where they can get fresh air, they can get some sunshine, totally secure. And the families can actually get in and spend time with them. They can even bring the dogs out and play with them. And then option number 4 is transitional housing. So when I'm talking with shelters, I'm always telling them they have to think from start to finish, and it needs to be pet inclusive. If at any point in the process there is a break in the chain, the family could, like I talked about in the prior podcast, go back to the abusive home, experience homelessness, or they surrender their pet. And none of those 3 options are okay with the SAFeTY program. They are not okay with me, and I don't think that they are okay with the shelters. So you have to think transitional housing. Now, a lot of shelters don't have transitional housing. Whatever your step is for your clients when they are leaving shelter, you need to help them find pet-friendly housing. So transitional housing is typically you're working with a landlord. You're working with an apartment complex or rental housing, and it's working with them to help them understand 2/3 of American homes have a pet. Domestic violence survivors have pets. And in order for them to remain safe, they need to be with their pet. Have a conversation. All the data, all the statistics is in the safety startup manual. You can have a conversation and help the landlord understand that they need to open this rental to pets. Now, the cost may be a pet deposit, and there are many shelters who are using HUD money, rapid housing money to pay for the pet deposits. They raise donations to pay the pet deposits. It is really important that this be part of your process. So in Ontario, Canada, the Rainy River District Women's Shelter of Hope sent me this photo, and it was with permission of Marianne and her little dog, Ollie. And I mean, they just sent me the most beautiful story of how she was finally able to come into transitional housing with her little dog, Ollie. And I just love that picture, the smile on her face, how she's holding Ollie and comforting him. And, they allow women to go into this, what they call second stage or transitional housing with their pets. And this is so important. So any cost is probably going to be a pet deposit, but where the work comes in is talking with the landlord and helping them understand the link between domestic violence and animal abuse and the safety issues involved. Okay. So these are the 4 housing options of the safety program that are even more greatly outlined in the safety startup manual. So again, the safety program is free to domestic violence shelters. They can go onto the safetyprogram.org website and request the safety startup manual. It is free to domestic violence shelters. And along with that, they get free sample forms, policies, and procedures. They get Word documents that they can tweak and edit and make their own. This is all free to domestic violence shelters. And there's just so many fantastic testimonials that we get here at the safety program, including this one from Bright Futures Foundation in Avon, Colorado, where they were utilizing the safety startup manual and they were able to get a client into shelter with their pet. They were able to partner with a local pet to provide discounted vaccinations so a kitten could join the family in the shelter. And this is why we do what we do at the safety program. And I know domestic violence shelters, they do what they do to keep people safe and out of harm's way. And that includes taking their pets into care. So if you like this podcast, please click the like button. And if you know of a domestic violence shelter in your community is not pet inclusive, please send this to them. And I will work with them. This is what we're here for. All right, thanks for joining in, and I look forward to chatting with you in the next episode.